Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly AgWeather Update brought to you by Farm Credit. I want to start you off on the other side of the planet. We're looking here on Saturday at some high-resolution satellite data that was in the Bay of Bengal. So that separates India from Southeast Asia. And what you're looking at here is a very powerful storm, a cyclone, Category 5 in strength that was heading right here between Myanmar and Bangladesh. Now, historically, Bangladesh has been the site of the deadliest tropical cyclone in world history. It's called the Bola cyclone back in 1970, if I remember that correctly. And when it went through here, there was up to 500,000 lives that were lost. Now, we don't yet know the full extent of the damage from this particular cyclone here that hit on Sunday, but I just want to remind you of what this part of the world's like. Bangladesh is formed as the Brahmaputra and then the Ganges River come together, so it's one very large delta. And I used to tell my students it's about the size of my home state of Illinois, but it's got about 10 times the number of people. So this is a very high impact place around the world. Now we're going to talk about the Atlantic hurricane season at the end of this video, but we're just starting off here in the Indian Ocean. Another major event that happened throughout this past week is seen on this particular figure. It shows you the last 7 days through Sunday morning of total accumulated precipitation. Now, as I was recording this on Sunday night, we were still watching more storms rolling through parts of Illinois. In fact, some severe weather here. But notice that we hit some of the major dry areas in the country with a lot of rain. Now, where we missed, right? Scattered throughout Georgia. More area missed in North and South Carolina that did get hit with rainfall. We were drier in New England. We were drier in the West. And there are still holes in this that don't show up well because your eyes are just kind of drawn to the colors. But there are several places that got down here and just did not receive much precipitation. But along with the severe weather and along with the very heavy precipitation, there were some places that had been deep in drought that finally got their first meaningful rainfall in months. I mentioned the severe weather. There was on Saturday a huge tornado that was in Nebraska. And a lot of people, or was it Friday? I can't remember. The whole weekend kind of blurs together right now. But this weekend, there was a lot of severe weather and some massive tornadoes that went through Nebraska. And we watched as some storm chasers, a famous one named Reed Timmer, actually just parked his truck right in the path and let the tornado go over the top of them. It was actually incredible to see. But this just illustrates what this past week did. And we say, why? What made this possible? Southwest flow. Okay, so when the jet stream does this in spring, it just lights up the midsection of the country. Now we talk about this because this is the pattern that got us there. Dips in the trough here, and the flow just comes right across the midsection of the country right now. But this flow, this pattern that I'm showing you here, which we've seen since March and into April and now at the beginning of May, it's gone. This is going to be gone for a little while. And I'm going to show you the new pattern that's evolving here in just a few moments. But what it did do was it hit these areas that are in drought pretty hard. So this was the latest drought monitor that was released last Thursday. And again, I just want you to see where those storms were in the country, just to understand how some of the crops we compete with in the Carolinas and Georgia, what other parts of the country saw out of this. Now, there are still holes, as I mentioned, and this is the latest data from NASA on Sunday, showing you soil moisture percentile down to 16 inches or 40 centimeters. And we just watched this area in parts of Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas that missed some of these bigger storms. There's even some drier air right over here in parts of Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky. And we have seen in the month of May drier conditions starting to show up in North and South Carolina. So we have to understand that while we see a map that just shows a tremendous amount of moisture, there are still holes in this. Now, thinking about this, I would like to show you the month-to-date precipitation ranks by climate district. Just to point out that after having such a wet April, we have now slid into May, and we are definitely on the drier side of the distribution for most of the territory we're concerned about here, from Georgia through the Carolinas and into Virginia. And just thinking about that, I wanted to point out there has been one benefit to this. When we look back over that time period, this is the last 30 days, we do note that there has been more sunshine, especially in the Carolinas. And as a result, some of the decent moisture in early April that we had, then followed by quite a bit of clearer skies here. This is a surplus of sunshine, has actually helped the crop get along, I think, pretty well here. But we always have to keep these statistics in aggregate and think about the bigger picture. And that's why I've built these tools on my website, agweather.com. That's ag-wx.com. And if you go here, you can come over to the upper left-hand corner. There's a little drop-down menu, and you can start typing. And I always do this, and I tend to always pick on Raleigh, but I'm going to do it again. So you start typing it in. It'll narrow the list down. Pick Raleigh, North Carolina, or pick whatever town you're in. It has to put the index number in there. So Raleigh's 47. Then you click submit, and it'll generate the forecast for you. And once it does that, you can then take a look at some of these longer term stats. So of course, here's your 7-day forecast going forward, but scroll down to the bottom. Now just take a look at this. This was the drier time period we had in March. And then at the beginning of April, right around April 10th, we got heavy rains. And this repeated a couple of other times, bringing us and our precipitation back above average. The flat line right here has been since the start of May. That's it. That's a little dry time period I showed you in the previous graphic. So you can use this. You can look at the year-to-date GDDs, which I've got here for you. In fact, we're above average in Raleigh on the year-to-date GDDs. You can look at your temperatures, average temperatures compared to normal. And then, of course, you have your forecast. And this is one of the things we're going to be talking about. When are these chances of precipitation trying to come through? Got a little bit of a chance here Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. And then we're thinking about what might happen next weekend. At least a couple of the models are picking up on that. One model that isn't is the European model. I compare all three of them here for you so you can kind of see what they look like. Okay, enough of a plug for that, but I just want to make sure you know that's a free resource. Get out there and take advantage of it. What I also want to point out is where this pattern has shifted to. So this was in the day on Sunday, looking at places where we were approaching or set new record high temperatures. And you can see where that is. It's in the Canadian Prairie. It's in the Pacific Northwest. And we need to know that because that's going to tell us what the jet stream is up to and where it's going. Because once again, on Sunday, we saw wildfires breaking out in British Columbia, Alberta, over towards Saskatchewan. And that smoke is spreading all the way across the Canadian Prairie here, getting over toward Ontario and Quebec and the Great Lakes. So quite important to see that. But with all of this heat in the west, look at what it's done to the country. We have heat advisories along the west coast. We have flood warnings or flood watches, severe thunderstorm warnings and flood watches here in Illinois. And then these are all frost and freeze advisories. So if a ridge is west, it can't be east at the same time. We can kind of see what this is doing. This was on Sunday as the sun was setting. Let me take you back in time. A lot of scattered storms trying to pop down here in Georgia late in the day on Sunday. Some cloud cover over the Carolinas and Virginia, but notice what we've got. Here is the smoke trail, at least in the southern part of it. And if there's smoke there, there's ridges and there's heat, and this is what the jet stream is doing. So it's kind of interesting. We watched this low get cut off here deep into the Gulf of Alaska, in fact, out in the open Pacific Ocean. And the flow is just running over the top of it like this. On Monday, we're going to watch flow spiraling around a ridge that'll be over the southeast. And north of it, there's going to be a front that's going to try to push through us on Tuesday night into Wednesday. And we'll see what that's going to do in terms of precipitation. But if the ridging is out west, I mean, you just see it here. There's 1, 2, and there's troughing over the east. We are just going to tend to see less risk for the extreme heat. Now, what I want to show you is how this all changes as a kind of a top-down view on planet Earth. So we're going to go straight to the North Pole here, and you're here, all right? So there's the ridge over the Canadian Prairie. And as we play this forward throughout this week, we see that that ridge dominates. So what do we end up getting? Flow that does something like this. So that's what's keeping us away from the extreme heat. That's what's keeping us on Tuesday with the better chance at some showers coming through parts of the Carolinas. It's at the bottom end of that trough. Now going out through Wednesday into Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, again, what do we see? Ridging here. Deep area of low pressure around Greenland. And that particular low pressure center around Greenland is what's going to prevent us along the East Coast here from seeing any sort of extreme heat. Because there's a lobe of it, a trough, that extends all the way out there next week, next Monday, that's sitting over us. So this flow is just doing something like this. Now we ask questions. Is this going to return precip? We'll see when that's going to do that. And what is it going to do after it breaks away? Because we're thinking about May 25th and 6th. So here's the 25th through the 26th. We start to lose this connection. It leaves a little shortwave down here, but these are not connected systems. And we go back into a pattern we saw at the beginning of May. So let's stitch it all together and go right to our high-res model first. Let's pick this up 7 a.m. on Monday. And what I want you to see is there's the frontal boundary trying to sag toward us. This is Monday night, getting into early Tuesday morning. So what do we see? Scattered showers coming over the Appalachian Mountains, scattered showers at times on Tuesday, getting into parts of North Carolina, but the main front crosses right there on Tuesday night, and that's when our best chance at rain is. Some places have better than a 60% chance of rain out of this. I'm actually working on a fun new graphic for you. If I go back here, where was it? There we go. And we just type in something here. Let's make some quick modifications to this 120 hour. You can actually see in Raleigh, so this is your new forecast graphics I'm working on, that the highest chance of precipitation is coming here on Tuesday night around 11 o'clock. You can see the temperatures after that, that's the red line, drop back off. And we'll see what this is going to do. So just some new fun stuff I can't wait to release to you. It'll all be available mobilely. I'm just excited about getting this done. It's some work I've wanted to do for a while. But what I need to do is kind of show you the bigger picture. Both the GFS and the European model do see this section of Virginia, North and South Carolina, and parts of Georgia as being a little drier than normal over the next week. Farther to the south, more storms, and that's why we see some wetter conditions here, and this includes some of the rain on Sunday. But we are a bit drier than normal. How much? About a ½ inch drier than normal. So to see when our chances at precip come through, I'm going to start you off right now on Wednesday mornings. That's after that front has come through. We already saw that in the high-res model. And then we have high pressure that builds in through Thursday and into Friday. And so where there's going to be rain will be on the southern periphery of that high pressure cell. So notice it's down in Georgia. Let me go backward here. This is through Thursday, getting into Friday. So see, our best chance of storms is here. Now what we are watching though is this Thursday is there's a low kind of curling through parts of Canada, and there's its front coming through the Midwest. And what I'll be watching for is through Friday night, getting into Saturday, that low might finally swipe through Virginia all the way down to Georgia, delivering a chance for some weekend storms. All right. So if we put it all together, the next 7 days, this is from the WPC. This is the outlook from the WPC. And they've got, generally speaking, most locations less than a ½ inch of rainfall. Now, we could get some locally heavier amounts, but that's what we're kind of seeing here. If we take a look at what the probabilities are of getting this precipitation to come through, this is the probability of getting more than an inch. So it's highest in Georgia and the coastal part of South Carolina. We're drier in the interior here, a little bit wetter in Virginia. And then maybe we flip this over and look at it another way. What's the probability of getting less than ½ of an inch? And now you see that this is your greatest area. This is the area that has the greatest chance of being drier. That's kind of the way I want to think about that. Week 2, why does it look drier in the Midwest? Well, the flow's coming through like this around a broader trough initially, and that's convergent, and therefore we don't see as much chances for wetter than average conditions. So we are still going to maintain chances of rainfall, but overall we're looking drier as we try to get in through the second half of this month of May. Not overly concerned just yet, and the reason why is that the heat's not pouring in at the same time. So to be honest, for a week in May in Raleigh to only be able to grab 120 GDDs, that's not hot. I mean, that's just not hot. And even these numbers down here in the south, this is just not hot. So let me show you what the temperatures are going to do. This is Sunday's highs. We already lived those, so let's get into Monday. That's when the cooler air is trying to come in Monday into Tuesday. So just notice, we're not, in these shades. All the heat is out west. We're seeing near normal temperatures. This is seasonal mid-May temperatures. Highs around low 80s and in some places upper 70s. That's Thursday, getting into Friday, and Saturday. It's kind of on repeat. No real extreme heat coming in. In fact, we don't see that happening for a while. This is a 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. And as I play this all the way out here, let's park at day 5 through 10, which would be the 19th to the 24th of May. I don't see any real deviations from normal that are concerning here. This is just maybe a degree or two cooler than average, and the model just wants to keep it there. All that heat likes to stay west. So that's critical. We're drier, but we're not putting the evaporative stress on the crop. In the west, I'm going to be watching for 2 to 3 inch evaporation rates, not down here in the southeast. Now, what we need to do to finish this video off is look long range and then look international. So this was some of the new data that was released on Friday from the Climate Prediction Center. They've got the wettest, there we go. They've got the wettest conditions right now due to split flow in the west. So the ridge comes up, it splits around to California, so this is your trough with your ridge, and the flow comes back in like this. And that's why we see drier conditions here, but for most of our territory, equal chances. We do expect things to warm up, though, get above average once we get into late May and the first 9 days of June. And that's echoed pretty well by most models, but I want to show you the precipitation side, there we go, from the European. The European is attempting to open up a whole corridor here. I'll just kind of shade it in of stormy conditions. Do you see that? This would be the month of June. There's good chances that we see quite a bit of thunderstorm activity during the month of June. So I have no kind of bells and whistles going off in my head that suggest that even though we've been drier as of late, okay, that we have any concern to just think about this getting worse and worse and worse. Now, you know what's top of mind for me, the position and strength of the Bermuda High. And June is the month. June is the month that we watch for the position of the Bermuda High to start to find its home in the Atlantic. So this is what the models are saying right now, but that's why we need to keep talking about this each week. All right. From here, I just want to remind you that we are watching an El Nino develop. And to be honest, for Georgia, North and South Carolina, the correlations are so weak in June and July with an El Nino that it's hard to tell that the El Nino is going to have any sort of a grip on the pattern. That's why I'm watching the Bermuda High much more closely. But I want you to know that right now, the Climate Prediction Center says June, July, August has an 89% chance of El Nino forming, and for the rest of the year, all the way to December, January, February, that's winter 23-24, over a 90% chance of having an El Nino. And what's going on right now is the waters are warming up rapidly here. They've stayed warm throughout our main hurricane area, and we have to watch these changes along the west coast because it's this negative PDO signal, that's the cold water here, that keeps competing with El Nino. But as of late, the waters off the west coast have been warming. We expect them to continue to warm, weakening that PDO signal. Now, all of this just really tells me what to maybe think about for the upcoming summer jet stream pattern. And at this point, there's no red flags for me about what the forecast holds. I'm still a bit perplexed, as I've told you the last 2 weeks, why the models are trying to put in some patchy drought area here in June, July, and August in some of Farm Credit's territory. I can't make sense of it. The only way I could make this happen is just to suggest that either Bermuda High is so weak and far to the south or so displaced I can draw off the map here, but way over toward Africa, that we just get weak high pressure in this area, no good flow. But I don't know. That doesn't fit the narrative very well. The National Multi-Model Ensemble, they are not in that camp. They've actually got near normal precipitation, even wetter than normal. And our own Climate Prediction Center has wetter conditions from there all the way back to the Ohio and Tennessee Valley. So this is why at this point we step back and say, okay, given El Nino, given the warmth of the oceans, is there anything right now that's got us just on guard about this being a really active time period for drought development? And I just don't see it. If that changes, of course, I will tell you, but at this point, I don't. I think June's going to be the critical month to watch the Bermuda High set up. Now, in terms of hurricanes, I don't have a whole lot of new information about the hurricane season. The fact that El Nino's developing quickly could really just stifle some of the development here in the main development region out in the Atlantic with too much wind shear, but we can always grow a system right next to the coast that could be highly impactful, and that's always going to be on the table. All right. So to finish this one up, we've looked at this, we've looked at that. Let me give you a little bit of an international perspective. The heat wave in the Iberian Peninsula is over. Much of Europe, getting into Russia, is going over into a warmer week ahead. Where that cyclone is going through Bangladesh, it is cold, but much of Australia has been quite cold as well. This is a cold fall for them, and it's been impacting the sowing of the winter crops. South America has gone over quite warm, and interestingly enough, much of Brazil is drier, but Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay looking quite wet with storms, fall storms happening in this area. Elsewhere, just want to show you that Central Europe is quite wet, but we are drier on the periphery here, including parts of Ukraine and the Russian wheat belt. So that just kind of gives you a couple of other growing areas internationally that we're keeping an eye on. But with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Appreciate your attention. We'll talk again next week. Thanks.